The only standard that I'm creating a video for in the urinary system is the anatomy of the kidney. The standard reads, I can describe the structure and function of the kidney, including proper labeling of a model organism. This is a lab practical standard, and you'll be working with dissecting a sheep kidney. So in the urinary system, what we're doing is we're trying to remove metabolic wastes and substances that you have too much of in the body in order to maintain a balance. It's a really homeostatic system. We're trying to keep your body fluids within a pH range, a composition range, and a volume range. There are only 4 major structures worth noting, and 2 of them are just connecting tubes. So the kidneys are the most important. They have huge arteries and veins that lead all of your blood into them so that the blood can be cleaned, and ultimately they will form your urine. The urine will travel through tubes called ureters down into the urinary bladder, where it is simply collected and stored. We have a lot of transitional tissue here that allows us to stretch this organ as we need to store more urine. And then when it's time to release, we'll open up a small sphincter here so that the urethra can convey that urine outside of the body, get rid of that waste. For the parts of the kidney, you'll notice that most of them begin with the word renal. That is a term that is describing the kidney itself. It's saying this is of the kidney, or this is a kidney-based structure. So outside of the entire kidney, we have a renal capsule. It's very fibrous and it protects the organ. You'll notice it's similar to something that the heart had, the pericardium. We have 2 major regions of the kidney. The renal cortex is an outer region that will appear lighter upon dissection. And then you'll see these, they look like seashells here, but these fan-like organs inside the renal medulla. These triangles are called renal pyramids, and they are stacked up against each other, and they do the majority of the blood filtering. Leading from these kidneys and heading down into the ureter are structures called calyces. You have big ones called the major calyx and small ones called the minor calyx. But ultimately, these tubes are collecting the urine that has been formed in these pyramids and will send it to the renal pelvis and eventually into the ureter. The renal sinus is a hollow chamber here in this medial depression. Kidneys are not round organs. They have a kidney bean shape to them. And so this depression in here contains a hollow chamber known as the renal sinus. Lastly, on this slide, the renal column are the small spaces that exist in between renal pyramids. They appear the same size as the renal cortex. When the major and minor calyx have collected urine, they funnel it into a large space called the renal pelvis. This will then channel that urine down into the ureter. The renal papilla are small hair-like structures that lead the urine down into the major and minor calyx. As I mentioned before, renal pyramids are these triangular structures of the renal medulla, and this is where blood heads in through these renal arteries and ultimately gets filtered to take out any metabolic wastes or any excess fluids. The ureter was that connecting tube that will carry urine down to the urinary bladder. And as I mentioned, there are 2 major blood vessels. The renal artery is going to bring blood into the kidney. The renal vein is going to carry blood out of the kidney.